Hi everybody, this is Kathy Drew from Gina's Bernina Sewing Center, and today I'm sitting in front of Bernina's fabulous B770 Quilters Edition. This is a very popular machine, and I thought that I would do a little video about how to navigate through the screen for you so that it might take some of the fear factor away. So when you look at the Bernina screen, it's rather divided up in a couple of sections. So the left side of the screen is always going to picture the stitch that you have selected. You can tell that I have the straight stitch selected because there's really an outline white casing around that stitch. And to choose a different stitch, you simply touch one of the stitches on the screen. Now there are multiple stitches in this screen, and the first screen that comes up is called the Practical Sewing screen. And you can see that it's highlighted in gray. It's almost like a tab on a file folder. And each one of these icons that you see on the right hand side of the screen contain folders of your stitches. So if I wanted to see my decorative stitches, I would tap the picture of the decorative stitch. You see now that tab turns gray, meaning that you're in that folder. And within it, because we have so many beautiful decorative stitches, you're going to find folders that have pictures on the front of them that represent the type of stitches that you're going to find within. Folder 101 has an outline of a flower that you see, and that's telling you that those stitches are primarily made of outline stitches, straight stitches. So let's select one of the stitches so you can see. So you've got little tulips here, and they're all stitched out using a simple straight stitch. Now some of these stitches also have a combination of a straight stitch and a satin stitch, so let's move over to this one, and you'll see the petals are a straight stitch, but the centers are a little satin stitch. So there is a combination, but primarily that stitch is going to be made of straight stitches. Now folder 401, you'll notice how black the stitch is that's on the front of the folder. These stitches are going to be primarily satin stitches. So you can see you have several in there. And let's just go ahead and select one. This is a precious heart, and then it straight stitches to the next heart that it stitches. If you want to see more of the stitches, because the average size of this screen allows you to see about 9 stitches of that particular folder, but if you would like to, you can expand your screen out to where you can see a lot more of the stitches, and then simply scroll through the screen to be able to see more. Okay, let me see if I can, there we go. Sometimes my finger works better than a stylus. All right, now I'm going to go back and tell the machine to reduce the screen to a smaller size, and then we'll go into our letters. And you have font styles that are pictured on the front. Some of them, if they have a lowercase to go with the capital letters, then they will be pictured also on the screen. We have buttonholes as well, and you have several of those. And guess what? If you're not really sure what all these buttonholes are for, there is a question mark on your machine that if you touch the question mark and then touch the picture of the stitch, or in this case the buttonhole, it will give you recommendations of where to use that particular buttonhole or stitch, whichever it is. Let's try 53 and see what it says. Let's hit the question mark and ask it. And this is a stretch buttonhole that is used for stretchy fabrics such as knits. And it even suggests that you use a stabilizer underneath. So don't forget about that question mark. It is fabulous. It's going to help you with all these icons that you see on the screen. All right, let's go back to our practical sewing screen, and I'm going to select stitch number 2. Now stitch number 2 is your basic zigzag. All the stitches will come up at a factory or default setting, but every stitch in the machine can be altered to your preference for what you need for the technique that you're doing. The number at the top of the stitch has arrows pointing to the left and the right. That is the setting for the width of that stitch. So our zigzag comes up at 3.6 for a width, and then the length on that stitch is 1.5. Like I said, these can be altered, and you have two ways of doing that. We'll start with the standard way that most of us will be familiar with. So I'm going to turn my camera so that you can see. You have stitch width and stitch length dials to the right of your sewing screen. The stitch width dial has a picture of a zigzag stitch showing the stitch getting wider. It's the dial on the top. Then you have the stitch length dial that has a picture of a straight stitch, and it is the one lower. We're going to go back to our sewing screen, and I'm going to turn the stitch width dial. And when I do that, you're going to see that the picture of the stitch on the left of the screen represents the setting that you're applying. Also notice that the number at the top of the stitch that represents your stitch width has turned yellow. That means that you have altered the stitch from the factory setting. The length of the stitch, represented by the dial with a straight stitch beside of it. The numbers will be represented here to the left of the stitch, and you can see as I add length, it makes a longer stitch that has more distance between the stitches. So you have a width and a length represented by the dials. To remove those settings and get it back to factory setting, you simply tap clear. If you also want to make a change, you have another way to do that. You can tap the icon for the stitch width. A screen pops up that allows you to use either a slide bar to alter that width or the minus and plus icons. When you make changes to the stitch in this screen, you'll get a yellow line around the box in the center that also shows the setting that you have just provided. Up at the top, you'll also see the same stitch width setting that you've just adjusted it to, and they're both in yellow, meaning you've altered it. To remove that setting, you simply tap the box on the screen. This is a great thing to use if you want to change the width. Let's say you're playing around one day, you change the width, then you go in and you also change the length. If we hit clear right now, it's going to clear out both those settings. But if we go in to the manual way of doing it, we can simply adjust the width only and leave our length. So this will allow you to delete the changes to either of those settings that you've changed it to. So there's nothing to be afraid of in these screens. You can't push a button and do any harm. Let's talk very quickly about some of the options that you have at the bottom. And one in particular that we just spoke of is the question mark to give you help about any of the stitches, any of the icons that you see on the screen. You can get an answer for what they are. So until you get used to your machine, that's a wonderful thing to have. But we also have tutorials built into the machine, so it's just like you have a teacher right in the room with you. Let's go into the little icon that looks like a book. And you have categories that you can choose that you might have a question about. And so let's just choose threading. I think everybody will probably need that at some point. And so even have a category about threads, winding the bobbin, threading the bobbin thread. So check out all these different options. Let's talk about threading the upper thread, and let's look in there and see what the video will be that it provides for you. So here you've got a little video going on that actually shows you how to thread your needle, the top part of your machine with your needle thread. And if you look, it even goes down and shows you how to use your needle threader in this video. Isn't that cool? I think it's a wonderful feature. Very helpful if you know it's there. Then you also have steps, written steps that it will take you through. So some people are good with visual, they need that, and some people need a verbal explanation. So you have both ways that you could view. But I think this is an excellent feature to have built into these machines. Let's check out another category and see what else. Oh, we have troubleshooting, so that might be a good one to look at. Let's look at buttonholes. Programming a buttonhole, about the automatic buttonholes, how to make manual buttonholes, even button sew-on stitch. Let's look at programming the buttonhole. And you'll have a complete description on what to do. Look at that. I love these videos. Every time I look at these machines, I get excited watching these videos. So I hope that'll be helpful to you also. If you need some help understanding the best tools and notions to use on fabric, this little dress form is called the Creative Consultant. And when you tap the icon, let's go back to the beginning. What comes up are different types of fabrics. Now, those can be difficult to figure out. I mean, immediately with that pocket, you think of jeans fabric. But if you're not sure what some of these are, there again, hit your question mark and then select one. So I'm going to select, we'll go for this woven. Medium weight woven talks to you about it, give you some examples of the fabrics also. So that told us what that icon was. Now I'm going to select it. Now it's asking me what technique is it that you want to do on that medium weight woven. Well, why don't we just select decorative stitches? And it suggests the needle type, the polyester thread, and the weight of the thread. Some stitches to use, the best presser foot to use, and whether or not we need stabilizer. And if there's a little plus sign there, it might give you even more information about it. Okay, so those are very helpful. And it's a good thing for you to go through that might make you feel a little bit more comfortable with your machine. On the top left-hand corner, the very top one, is your needle tension. So if you should ever have to alter your tension because you're using specialty threads on the needle, you simply tap the icon. The higher the number, the more tension you're applying. So you can use either the dial or the plus and minus buttons, and to clear it, you simply touch the icon that has a yellow line around it that showed your altered setting. If you tap on this icon, it's going to list all the different presser feet. And when you tap on a particular foot, let's go down and choose a good one, it will give you a description for it. Edge stitch foot number 10. Use it for any type of stitching where a straight guide is required. And you can read through all that and get a good description of the different presser feet that are available for your machine. This is the weight or the pressure that the presser foot is applying to your fabric. The higher the number, the greater the pressure that's being applied. So if you're working on a really lightweight, slippery fabric, you might want to increase that tension. If it's a very thick fabric, then you might want to reduce that pressure so that it won't be holding the fabric so tightly and it allows it to feed out from under the presser foot better. To clear your setting, there again, just tap the icon that shows your change that you made. This is a security program. It makes sure that if you've got any of these specialty feet or throat plate covers on the machine, it will restrict you from using stitches that could cause you to break a needle on the presser foot or the throat plate cover. So let me give you an example. This is your straight stitch throat plate cover. It's designed for straight stitch only, and I have selected it. I will go back. And if you notice, the zigzag is still selected, but we're only getting a straight stitch. If I try to adjust the setting with my stitch width dial, it will show that zigzag stitch, but because it's red, that means it's not going to allow you to stitch and cause an issue. All right, so that's very good. We love that. We're going to go back to the 9mm throat plate cover. The same goes for any of the specialty needles. Because we normally sew with a single needle in our machine, when we go to a double needle, which is 2 needles attached, and I'll go ahead and choose like a 4mm. What the 4mm means is that there are 2 needles that have a distance between the two of 4mm. When we tap on that needle, it is going to protect us from choosing a stitch that could break the needle. It will set it at the maximum width you can sew with that double needle, but you are not allowed to change it to anything that is so wide that it would break your needle, and that is represented by red, and when you see that, it will not let you sew. Let me go back in, and you will have to go in and reset these things manually. Even if you turn the machine off, it doesn't clear them out. They want to make sure they're doing everything. One of the things that people have complained about is going back to their machine after a few days and not remembering what size needle or what type needle they have in the machine. So the little icon, oh, I clicked on that too fast. It's got the little bow on it. If you tap that icon, you can select whatever needle and type you're using, and I'm going to scroll through. You can see that all of the different needle types are selected, and we'll just choose a top stitch needle. Then you go over on this side and you can tell it what size is in there. And then after you turn the machine off and you come back a few days later, if you need a reminder as to what needle is in your machine, you simply tap the icon and it will be highlighted in white, showing the type of needle and the size of needle that you've put in. So I hope that helps you a little bit. The screen is not anything you need to be afraid of. Don't forget about that question mark. That's very helpful. And if you're sewing one day and you don't want to turn the machine off, you can hibernate it. You want to leave it on, you can hibernate it and it will shut the machine down and turn the light off for you. Save some power. When you come back, tap the icon, light comes on, the machine boots right back up at the last place you were. I hope this helps you a little bit. If you have any questions, you could contact us at info@ginasbernina.com or also call us with a phone number of 865-966-5941. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye now.